Here we are again. It's Ecology Matters with me, Pat.
And me, Jeanette.
And today we're on a sand dune on the northwest coast in Merseyside. And we're here looking at flowers. Look at this. And if you think that's interesting, try this for size. All of that stuff is a problem. Let's go and find out why. So we're on what we might call a relic dune system. That is a place where the sand dunes used to be very obvious. They're still here, the sand's still here of course, underneath all the vegetation. But they're no longer functional in the same way as they would be closer to the coast, to the sea. In other words, these are fixed dunes. They're no longer mobile and shifting around. Not all dunes are mobile and shifting, of course. These fixed dunes do occur behind some of our fantastic dune systems on the Sefton Coast. Here's one of the flowers that's very characteristic at this time of year. We're in sort of late July. This is one of the evening primrose families, species that probably came in on the wool shoddy in the docks near Liverpool and has since found a home, establishing itself in these sort of sandy coastal systems. Can you believe this is a conservation area for common lizards? It must seem quite weird to some people to come across an area that's got a road, a cycleway, housing, and all this stuff beside it. Or there's a railway line on the other side. You might hear the train going past at some point during the filming today. We've got some more of that evening primrose, and we've got this fence line. Now the fence line's quite interesting. It's part of the conservation of the site, and the idea is to try and minimise disturbance to the common lizards while still allowing certain things to happen, like rabbits to graze. So the fencing has to be permeable to rabbits, and it also has to make sure that it reduces the amount of disturbance from, say, people walking, dog walkers, cyclists, as it's next to a cycle path and things like that. And here's one of the issues with the fencing. Ideally, it's supposed to kind of discourage people from walking through the area. Here's Jeanette doing the vegetation survey. She's walking up to the fence. Now just watch how difficult it is for her to get around or over this fencing. She's struggling. Here she goes. It's creating quite an issue, but she's over. She's managed. There she is. Unfortunately, when certain things are constructed for nature conservation purposes, they're not quite up to the mark. And in terms of fulfilling what it's here for, this fence is a little bit shy of what we're looking for.
So I'm now in the centre of what is supposed to be the Dune grassland. Another issue with this site, because it hasn't been managed. Just wait for the train to go past. So what we've got here is a dense area of false oak grass. And the structure of this is tall and rank, which is not conducive with dune grassland plants or the needs of common lizards. As you can see as I wade through, it's very thick and dense and is outcompeting the more specialist dune species that we want to try and encourage here.
Here's a great example of irony in the conservation world. What we've got here is a range of wildflowers, including rest harrow, some hawkbit species, which are the kind of things on a site like this in the dunes that you're really glad to see. You feel like they're growing in the right sort of place. However, if you look at where these are actually growing, they're growing along the site boundary, and yet this is where the most interesting plants are growing, on the edge of this reserve. There's the reserve interior. They're growing along the edge of the reserve, at the bit that's being disturbed most by people, leading to the other types of plants, the more robust plants, being suppressed and creating an opportunity where the original dune vegetation can survive. One of conservation's ironies that things don't always appear and survive in the places that you've designed or cared for them or put aside for them.
So I've just come across a reptile survey mat that was probably left here from the original surveys prior to any works on site. We've not actually come across anything while we've been walking over the site. Not to say that there's nothing here, of course, but anyway, features like this are often left on sites like this because they can be used as refugia and basking areas, and it also means that there's something for us to come back to and survey at another time. So Pat, can I just ask you to lift it up and see if we've got anything under there? Okay, it looks pretty clear at the moment, nothing, just a few ants, but no lizards. As we've already mentioned, part of the site boundary is next to the railway line. Boundaries are quite an important feature of this site, being narrow and already constrained by housing and other uses. But one thing to note is that fortunately they have kept this boundary open, which means that if the site is managed better for things like common lizard, they will be able to migrate. The railway line is quite an important corridor in this area for species like lizards to be able to migrate from one site to another. So this is a positive aspect of the site, and one that will be encouraging them to continue. Here's another common problem for sites like these, and one that I don't particularly want to get too close to, but in all honesty it is something that this site is going to suffer from, and something that needs to be managed carefully if we want to meet the objectives of having a good quality dune grassland. And sadly, as we see in a lot of places, people don't pick up after themselves or after their dog.